So you've got atheism, Islam, and Christianity, three of the most influential worldviews on the planet. They can't all be right, or can they? Well, it turns out the answer really depends on where you start, on your foundation for truth. And today, we're going to dig into exactly what those foundations are.
All right, let's just jump right in with the big question, right? Between atheism, Islam, and Christianity, who is right? It seems like such a simple question on the surface, but believe me, the answer is anything but.
And that's because when you ask that question, you're really uncovering these completely different frameworks for understanding reality itself. Each worldview is kind of playing by its own unique set of foundational rules.
And that is the crucial point. The entire debate, the reason these worldviews can seem so totally incompatible, it all boils down to what each one considers its ultimate source of authority, its foundation for truth.
So let's break down these competing foundations. First up, we're going to explore the basis of authority for each one.
First up, atheism. Its foundation completely rejects what's called supernatural revelation. The idea that truth comes from a divine being. Instead, for the atheist, truth is what we can discover and prove through science, logic, and observable evidence.
Now, the strength of this approach is its commitment to rational consistency and solid proof. It's very clean. The challenge, though, at least from a religious perspective, is that it doesn't offer any source for divine meaning or objective morality. In this view, those concepts are essentially human creations.
Okay, next we have Islam. Its foundation for truth is the Qur'an. The belief here is that it's the direct, totally unaltered, and final word of God, which was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad and has been perfectly preserved ever since.
So the strength of this foundation is that it offers a really clear, unchanging divine guide. The challenge for an outsider is that its authority really rests on you accepting two huge premises. One, that Muhammad was a prophet, and two, that previous scriptures, like the Bible, were corrupted over time.
And that brings us to Christianity. Its foundation is the Bible, which is seen as God's inspired word. Now that's a really key distinction. The belief is that it was written by many different human authors over centuries, and that these authors were guided by divine inspiration as they wrote.
The Bible's strength is undeniable. It has these profound historical roots and has had an absolutely massive moral and cultural impact on the world. The challenge, though, comes from the fact that there are known variations in the ancient manuscripts, and its authority ultimately relies on faith in its divine inspiration.
So here's a quick summary of those core differences. Atheism stands on reason, but it offers no divine meaning. Islam claims a perfectly preserved revelation, but that requires you to accept its prophet. And Christianity has had this immense moral and cultural impact, but it rests on faith and deals with textual complexities. Three completely different starting points.
Okay, to make this a little less abstract, let's use one of these worldviews as a case study. We're going to explore how Islam's foundation interacts with the moral, cultural, and rational standards of our modern world.
So when it comes to moral guidance for its followers, Islam provides this powerful and complete ethical system. But when you view it from the outside, especially through a modern liberal lens, some of its codes on issues like gender and punishment can seem to clash with today's secular values.
And culturally, Islam's historic golden age gave the world incredible advances in science and art. It was a powerhouse. In today's context, though, Western culture tends to dominate global media and technology, and that creates a dynamic where other cultural influences just don't have the same reach.
And what about reason? Well, while Islam has this deep history of rational thought, its claims are often framed as faith-based in modern debates with atheism. That's because the modern, scientific standard for evidence is often limited to only what's physically testable and repeatable.
For a really sharp example of this clash of foundations, let's just see how atheism and Islam view Christianity's foundational text, the Bible. The contrast here is just stark. The atheist sees the Bible as an important but flawed human document. Islam, on the other hand, sees it as something that was a true divine revelation at one point, but that it was changed and ultimately corrected and replaced by the Qur'an.
So for the atheist, the Bible is unreliable as divine truth, but can be a cultural guide. For the Muslim, it contains some moral lessons from its original divine source, but it's considered corrupted, with the Qur'an being the superior and final authority.
So, this brings us right back to our starting point. We've seen how different the foundations are. So let's reframe that original question. Who is right?
And here it is, the crucial point. The answer to who is right
isn't some simple declaration. It depends entirely on the criteria you choose to measure truth with. It all depends on your foundation.
Let's just break that down. If your primary measure for truth is pure reason and empirical evidence, then atheism presents the strongest case. If your measure is a perfectly preserved and direct divine revelation, Islam claims that unique strength. And if your measure is profound moral and historical impact on civilization, well then Christianity has an incredibly strong stand.
See, each foundation leads to a different conclusion. And that means the real question isn't just about them, it's about you. So what is your measure of truth?